guys, it's Patricia from TarantulaHeaven.com. We have Miss Spidey here. She's actually eating a roach. This is her first one in quite a few months, so it's great to see her eating again. And she's a Grammostola rosea, and so that's what it's like to own one of these guys. Random fasting periods for no reason. Anyway, so today I wanted to talk about another G rosea, and actually a really cool story about the ethical treatment of tarantulas in, I guess you could say, a workplace setting or a place that relies on tarantulas interacting with the public and how they actually do that ethically. And I love this article because I don't get to hear about this stuff too much. You guys probably don't either. And I've always wondered, like, when tarantulas are on movie sets or when they're in zoos, like, how do they make this safe for them? So the people at Butterfly Pavilion in Denver, Colorado have definitely found a really great system, and I want to share it with you because I hope it inspires all of us to just think more about our tarantulas and the care that goes into other tarantulas that may be more public facing. So there's a Chilean rosehair, which is Spidey's exact species, working at the Butterfly Pavilion in Denver, and her name is Rosie, which is, I think, a very common name for a rosehair tarantula. And if you were a frequent visitor to that Butterfly Pavilion, you would think that Rosie's probably an incredibly hardworking spider because she's there every day and has been there for years and years and years. But they actually switch out this tarantula, which is so cool. This particular tarantula, Rosie, is actually several different tarantulas of the same species, and she's quite a star over there, which is really cool to see that people like really embrace. So people often do come to see her, and the team over there has tried to figure out, like, how do we make this okay for the tarantula? And if you know anything about tarantulas, they do not like a lot of interaction. And so Rosie is kind of like a character that all these different rose hairs play. So just to kind of put them into perspective, Sarah Stevens, who is the director of animal relations at Butterfly Pavilion, estimates that there have probably been about 140 different tarantulas that are Grammostola roseas that have played Rosie since 1995. People who frequent this Butterfly Pavilion and go to see Rosie May feel like they're holding her every time, but they're not. And rose hairs, I mean, of course there are little differences between individual to individual, but generally I think the differences are so small that you probably wouldn't notice. I do think, and it's interesting because Spidey has like these stripe things on her legs, and she often gets mistaken as a different species sometimes on like her Tumblr blog. So I wonder if it's actually not that similar. But I don't know, maybe that's just a Spidey thing. But generally rose hairs look very similar. And so the spiders that play Rosie, they'll play their part, and then they'll eventually retire, which I think is very nice, and then they'll pass on. But Rosie will live forever because there always will be somebody playing her. And apparently their job is quite good even before they retire, to where they're only working 2 hours every 7 days. I think that is awesome. And Steven said this is actually a intentional effort by the Butterfly Pavilion to take the animals' needs into account, which I don't hear enough. So this is what she said: "We do put a lot of effort into making sure that the animals we're working with have choice. And if they no longer want to be ambassador animals, they tell us through behavior cues and things like that." Super interesting. And these tarantulas, I think it's really important because they're often handled by people at the Butterfly Pavilion, and that can also make the tarantulas just as nervous as the person who's holding their first tarantula. Steven said that if the rose hairs start showing signs of burnout, which I guess could be irritability, or signs of stress like kicking hairs off of their abdomen or getting bald spots where they're not supposed to, not connected to pre-molt, they get a break, and if they do not happily go back to work, then they're rotated out of the program. And so I guess that's what Steven means in terms of behavioral cues. I'm not really sure how that is done, but these people know more about tarantulas than I do, so I believe there's some sort of method to the madness. And the nice thing about this is when Stevens is saying rotated out of the program, that does not mean they're euthanized. So the ones that no longer want to be front-facing tarantulas, they actually have other jobs at the Butterfly Pavilion. So some are sent to other animal collections and other zoos. Stevens said, people all along the Front Range, all throughout Colorado, love Rosie. I get stopped in grocery stores sometimes if I'm wearing my name tag on my shirt, and they'll be like, oh, 10 years ago I held Rosie. You know, I think that's something we take for granted here, that so many people have an amazingly positive relationship with the tarantula. And ambassador animals are incredibly important because usually people are afraid of spiders and tarantulas, sometimes not even for any clear reason other than conditioning from either their families, their parents, or media, or, you know, fear-mongering and stuff like that. So through these interactions with the tarantulas that can actually tolerate being held or front-facing, does help people realize that tarantulas do not pose a danger to humans unless they actively feel threatened. And they are much more scared of you than you might be to them. And Stevens said the goals of the Butterfly Pavilion are to foster an appreciation and respect for invertebrates. What Rosie does is Rosie makes it so kids are excited about a giant spider as opposed to being afraid of one. And the Butterfly Pavilion also has a lot of other spiders as well. Tarantulas are not it. They have jumping spiders, they have a black widow spider, and they're actually working on another different species as a new ambassador spider in addition to Rosie, going to be a Chaco golden knee. So it's really cool that they're going to be doing more of this front-facing work or public-facing work to help educate the public about tarantulas and to not be afraid of them. So I really, really enjoy that this organization, it seems to really put the tarantula's needs first, which I think is so important and so different to how things are normally done. They must have quite a collection of rose hairs because every tarantula only works about 2 hours every 7 days, which I think is really nice. And they do look for the tarantula's health overall, their maybe level of irritability or stress when they consider, you know, does this spider need to go back to work? Do they need more of a break? Have they been working too hard? I love that. And think what you may about it, but I think it's really awesome. So if anybody lives in Colorado, have you been to the Butterfly Pavilion? I think that if I were to ever go, I would definitely want to, just because this seems like a really, really cool operation. And I definitely appreciate people who really advocate for ethics in the care of our pets that are non-mammals and the creatures that are non-mammals. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful Tarantula Tuesday. I'll see you next week. Bye.